The flood. Script. The rain didn't start slowly. It didn't build. One moment the sky was whole, and the next it broke apart, like something behind it had been pressing against it for a very long time and finally got through. Water fell from above. Water surged from below. And within hours, every landmark, road, every familiar thing on the surface of the earth began to disappear. There was one boat, one way, and outside that boat, everyone else. To understand the flood, you have to understand what the world looked like before it happened. And according to Genesis, it was bad. Not just sinful, corrupted at a level that goes beyond what most people realize. Story. The text says something strange. It says that beings called of God, and there's been centuries of debate about who exactly they were, came down and took women as wives. Their children were called the Nephilim, giants, powerful, famous, and violent. The ancient world was being overrun by something that wasn't fully human. And here's the part that usually gets skipped. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5 says this: "The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." Read that again. Every intention, only evil, continually. Not sometimes, not mostly. Every thought, all the time, in every person. Then comes verse 6, and this is the line that should stop you cold. "And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart." God regretted making people. That's in the text. The being who spoke the universe into existence looked at what humanity had become and felt grief. Not anger, grief. The kind of grief that comes from watching something you love destroy itself. In the middle of all this, there was one man. His name was Noah, and the text describes him with a phrase that matters more than it seems. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Blameless in his generation. Not perfect, blameless compared to everyone around him. In a world where every thought was evil, Noah was the exception. God spoke to Noah directly, and what he said was not a gentle warning. He said, "I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth." That's not a weather forecast. That's an extinction event. God told Noah to build an ark, a massive wooden vessel, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. That's roughly 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet tall. To put that in perspective, that's about 1.5 football fields long. This wasn't a boat, this was a floating warehouse, and Noah built it. In a world that had never seen rain, Genesis says the earth was watered by mist from the ground, not from the sky. A man spent decades building a ship in the middle of dry land because a voice told him water was coming from a place water had never come from. Think about what that looked like to everyone around him. A lunatic, an old man hammering wood together for years, talking about rain when nobody had ever seen rain. His neighbors watched. They mocked. They went back to their lives. Then God told Noah to bring the animals, 2 of every kind, 7 pairs of the clean animals, birds, livestock, creatures that crawl on the ground. Every species loaded into this enormous vessel with enough food to sustain them for over a year. The text says something that people always miss. Genesis 7 verse 16, "And the Lord shut him in." God closed the door. Not Noah, God. He sealed the ark from the outside, and once that door closed, it was closed for everyone. There was no more time, no more chances, no more knocking. The flood didn't come from one direction. The text says 2 things happened simultaneously. All the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. Water from below and water from above at the same time. The great deep. That phrase appears throughout the Old Testament as a reference to something primordial, something beneath the surface of the earth that was held back by God's command. On the day of the flood, that barrier was removed. The earth itself split open and the rain. 40 days and 40 nights of continuous rainfall. Not a storm that comes and goes, an unbroken wall of water falling from the sky for almost 6 weeks straight. The water rose. First the roads, then the fields, then the houses, then the trees, then the hills. The text says the water covered the highest mountains by 15 cubits, about 22 feet above the tallest peak. There was no high ground left, no escape route, no mountaintop to climb to. Everything that breathed air and walked on dry land died. Every person, every animal, every bird. The text doesn't soften this. Genesis 7 verse 23. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. Now here's where the story gets uncomfortable for everyone, including people who think they know it well. The flood lasted a lot longer than most people realize. The rain fell for 40 days, but the water didn't recede for 150 days after that. Noah and his family were inside that ark for over a year, 370 days total. A year, in a dark, floating box, with every species of animal on earth. No windows you could see out of. The ark had one window at the top for ventilation. No way to know what was happening outside, just the sound of water and the weight of waiting. And outside that ark, the entire world was a graveyard. Every city, every village, every person Noah had ever known who wasn't on that boat, gone. His neighbors, his extended family, people who had laughed at him while he built the ark, all of them were now beneath the water he was floating on. The text doesn't say how Noah felt about that. It doesn't need to. You can feel it yourself. Here's what most people miss about this story. It wasn't just about punishment. Something was being undone. When you go back to the creation account in Genesis 1, God separates the waters above and the waters below. He creates a space between them called the sky and places dry land in the middle. The flood reverses that. The waters above and the waters below come back together. The separation unmade. Creation itself is being rolled back to the state it was in before God said, "Let there be." The flood wasn't just destruction, it was de-creation. God was uncreating the world and starting over. After 150 days, the text says, God remembered Noah. That word, remembered, doesn't mean God forgot. In Hebrew, it means God turned his attention back, re-engaged, acted on a prior commitment. The wind blew, the waters receded. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Noah sent out a raven. It flew back and forth, but found no place to land. Then he sent a dove. The first time, it came back with nothing. It returned with an olive leaf in its beak. The third time, it didn't come back at all. The ground was dry. God told Noah to come out. And the first thing Noah did, the very first thing, after a year in the dark, after surviving the end of everything, was build an altar and make a sacrifice. Not for himself, for God. He burned the best of the clean animals as an offering, and the text says, the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. And then God made a promise. He said, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intent of heart is evil from his youth. Read that carefully. The same reason God sent the flood, the evil in the human heart, is now the reason he promises never to do it again. Humanity didn't change. God's response changed. He set a rainbow in the sky, not as a decoration, as a covenant sign, a binding agreement between God and every living thing on earth. Every time it rains and the bow appears, it's not a symbol of hope in some vague greeting card sense. It's God looking at his own weapon, the bow, aimed at the sky instead of the earth, and remembering his promise not to pull the trigger again. The flood is not just a story about water, it's a story about a door. There was a moment, a specific, real, unrepeatable moment, when the door of the ark was still open. Anyone could have walked through it. The invitation existed. The boat was right there, visible to everyone, and people chose not to enter. Then God shut the door, and that was it.
Every ancient culture on Earth has a flood story.
The Sumerians had one. The Babylonians wrote the Epic of Gilgamesh, which contains a flood narrative older than the Bible's version. The Greeks had Deucalion. The Hindus had Manu. Cultures that never had contact with each other, separated by oceans and centuries, all tell a version of the same event. A world drowned, a man warned, a vessel built, a remnant saved. Either every civilization on Earth independently invented the same story, or something happened that none of them could forget. And here's the seed that connects to everything else. Jesus himself referenced the flood. In Matthew 24, he said, "As were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." He didn't say it as metaphor. He said it as a pattern, a warning that whatever happened once is the blueprint for what's coming again. Not water next time, but the same choice, the same door, the flood.
I was there when the deep broke open.
That sound, the earth splitting beneath the water, you don't forget it.
I was there when the deep broke open.
That sound, the earth splitting beneath the water, you don't forget it. It wasn't destruction. It was an unmaking. God let creation fold back into what it was before he spoke.